Let it be. For me, your man, Louie T. Welcome to the 2021 NFL Draft Wrap-Up Series here on the Louie T Network. I, of course, am your host, Louie T. Thank you for joining me as we will go through each and every single team's 2021 NFL Draft here on the Louie T Network. This has been a staple on this channel since its inception, and so this is no different. This is going to be a much more efficient, faster process. This is the you pick format, as you all know if you've been around, where you guys select the next team up in the series. We're kicking this thing off with the Pittsburgh Steelers and their 2021 NFL Draft. As you can see, the 9 selections they made in this draft. We'll break those players down and those picks here in a second, but quickly I want to explain to you how the you pick format works. Simply be the first to leave a comment in the comment section stating 2 things: the phrase next and the team you'd like to see next. Some examples would be Steelers next, Pitts next. You get it. And the next team up in the series is, in fact, the Pittsburgh Steelers. And they're one of the more predictable teams in the NFL to forecast their draft because their GM, Kevin Colbert, has made no bones about it. It's not a secret. They draft for need. Unlike most teams in the league who draft based on the board and trying to get best player available, extracting the most out of their draft picks, the Steelers don't do that. And this is a prime example of that with their draft. I don't love this draft by the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's not a terrible draft. They got some really good players in the draft and maybe 1 or 2 gems out of this draft potentially. But I thought they reached on a few players. And so I think this is a case in point of where potentially, and we could be wrong, I could be wrong, where, reaching for a player based off of need can go wrong. We'll see. I know what they're looking at these players as, and that's the thing that gives me confidence. If they can coach up these players, then there's nothing to worry about. But if they can't extract the talent that exists out of these players that are extremely raw, then they reached for some players. So let's get into this draft. I don't want to talk your head off. We start in the first round, 24th overall selection. Running back out of Alabama, Najee Harris is the pick. And we all saw this one coming a mile away. Some of these pictures and the artwork that you see in front of you were done prior to the pro days. There was no combine this year, so there was no way to get an official weight on a lot of these guys prior to these pro days. So with Najee Harris, he's not 6'2", 230. That was just an estimation given out by Alabama. He's 6'1", 232, so not too far off. He's a big guy. That's all you need to know. And he fits right with what the Steelers are looking for and what they need, honestly. I couldn't stand the running back situation in Pittsburgh last year and the lack of run game. It was comical at the end of last season. And it's not Pittsburgh Steelers football. That's not who they are. That's not who they've been over their existence. And I didn't think that was a winning formula for them. They started out the season 11-0, but the run game started to curtail probably after like week 5 or 6. And they need to be able to run the football. And I was never a James Conner fan. I thought he was extraordinary. Not extraordinary, just extraordinary. And he's now in Arizona, and that's a good thing if you're a Steelers fan because this is a massive upgrade here in Najee Harris. This guy can do everything. He reminds me not necessarily of his game in terms of Le'Veon Bell, but just the way he can be productive in so many facets of the game. And so that's what you need for your offense. You need a guy that can catch it out of the backfield. You need a guy that can run the football inside and outside, a guy that can be elusive but be physical and run guys over at the same time. And you're getting all of that in this package known as Najee Harris. So I want to quickly just give you an analysis of Najee Harris and what you should expect from him, and then give you a grade for this selection and move forward. So Najee Harris made a decision after the 2019 season that few college running backs make when slated to be a potential day 1 or at worst day 2 pick in the upcoming draft by deciding to return to Tuscaloosa for his senior season. It was a decision that he would not regret, setting career highs nearly across the board and cementing himself as a future first-round pick. Harris is a tall, upright runner that has different dimensions to his game. Harris features the ability to power through contact as a yards after contact machine with tremendous contact balance, which is one of my favorite traits for a running back, is contact balance. To me, if you really want to look at the better backs in the league and the guys that we consider to be among the best, look at contact balance, and you don't need to look much further than that. When we talk about the Dalvin Cooks, the Christian McCaffreys of the world, when we start talking about the guys we look at as some of the better running backs in the league, Alvin Kamara, to me, has the best contact balance probably of any back in the league. You don't have to look much further than contact balance. Aaron Jones, another guy, tremendous contact balance. Najee Harris is in that discussion as well. So, meanwhile, still shifty enough to make defenders miss with a cut or an acrobatic leap. While his frame says in between the tackles bruiser, which he is, okay, his skill set can transform to an edge-grabbing tyrant who can embarrass uninspired tacklers. The biggest improvement for Harris in his collegiate career was in the receiving department, where he saw dramatic leaps in production and usage as he showcased his versatility to be a mismatch in the pass game. Also a very capable blocker in pass pro situations, Harris has solidified his three-down ability heading into the next level. While Harris functions as a monotone runner with no real home run speed, he more than offsets those gear deficiencies with ball security and raw ability. So you're getting a guy with not always the best patience in the world. And so you're going from one end of the spectrum to the other and Le'Veon Bell is the gold standard in terms of patience. That's not what you're getting here in Najee Harris. Sometimes he can be a little too hasty to make a decision, but all in all, you're getting a guy that does everything you want a running back to do. The only thing, as I mentioned, that he doesn't have are different gears. He's not going to kick it into high gear because there is no high gear. He's pretty much a guy that puts it in drive and it stays in drive. This isn't a stick shift here where you can shift it into different gears. This is an automatic. You just put it in drive and you just go. And so he's not going to get up to 21 miles per hour. You're not going to catch him on one of these trackers for the NFL running 21 miles an hour. He's not Derrick Henry, but what he is he's a physical specimen. And that's exactly what the Steelers needed in their backfield. And I couldn't think of a better selection. And honestly, who didn't see this one coming? If you're a Steelers fan, you knew this was going to be the pick. I'm not a Steelers fan. I mocked this draft pick to the Steelers, and I think most people that did a mock draft that were responsible mocked them Najee Harris, and for good reason. He's a great fit for this organization. He looks, he smells, he feels like a Pittsburgh Steeler. And so that's exactly what he is. This is exactly what they needed. It's what the doctor ordered. And so in the first round, 24th pick overall, running back Najee Harris, for me, is a 5. And it's a slam dunk, home run, no doubt about it, pick for the Steelers. And if you're looking for a comp to Najee Harris, if you're looking for a guy to think about to say, who does he remind you of in the league? What can we expect? Think Steven Jackson, the former St. Louis Rams running back that had a tremendous career. Think Steven Jackson. That's what Najee Harris reminds me of. Small choppy steps, not big open strides, big physical back that can also get outside and capture the edge, but doesn't have home run speed. Okay, Steven Jackson wasn't a blazer by any stretch of the imagination, but if he got a lane, he could go much faster than slow, and that's the same can be said for Najee Harris. Great pickup by the Steelers, and I think their offense just got exponentially better, especially in an area that they struggled in mightily in the run game. So we go to the second round, 55th pick overall for the Pittsburgh Steelers, in which they select tight end Pat Freiermuth out of Penn State. This is another tremendous pick by the Pittsburgh Steelers, a guy that they desperately needed. I mean, I've heard comparisons to Heath Miller out there. He's a way better athlete than Heath Miller ever was. But if you're a Steelers fan, that warms your heart to hear those types of comparisons. And the fact that that comparison did exist out there lets you know the kind of football player that he is. He's tough. He's physical. He gets yards after the catch. He's everything you love to embody in Pittsburgh. And I don't know what y'all going to do. Maybe Muth when he catches the football, because you love to do that for your tight ends. He'll grow into a fan favorite in Pittsburgh more likely than not, because he's a blue-collar guy. So I think this is going to ultimately be one of your favorite draft picks, along with Najee Harris. I think he's going to be outstanding for you. I've already broken down Pat Freiermuth. A whole video has been done. I will leave the link in the description, or I will pin that comment to this video, so that you can go and access the videos of Pat Freiermuth and another one of your draft picks that you made in this draft that I was already able to break down prior to the draft. So I won't do that here. What I will do is read my quick analysis of Pat Freiermuth, and you can get all of the different attributes that I think he brings to the table in the video that I have done already. Penn State University has been known as an athletic factory that continues to churn out these freaky athletic marvels. Pat Freiermuth doesn't fit that mold like his predecessor, Mike Gesicki. But there are some things that he does, and there is a place in the league for guys like Pat Freiermuth. Freiermuth is more of an in-between tight end. Can run enough, but not a true mismatch that defensive coordinators lose sleep over. Can block enough, but not enough to feel totally comfortable leaving him one-on-one with aggressive defenders. Has good athleticism, but not enough of a true separator. But what Freiermuth does have is good zone awareness, reliable hands, enough speed to stretch the field vertically, up the seams especially, and the toughness to catch the football in traffic and move the chains and score touchdowns. In an average tight end class, Freiermuth will be one of the more highly sought after tight ends that people believe could be a difference maker at the NFL level. And I think that was so true of this draft. It wasn't a deep draft at the tight end position. If you really wanted one, you needed to get it early, and the Steelers did exactly that, snatching up Pat Freiermuth in the second round. And again, I couldn't think of a better fit. You know, you've gone through the Jesse Jameses and the Eric Ebrons, and Ebron was cool, you know, but Ebron was inconsistent. He wasn't much of a blocker, which is part of the reason your run game struggled the way that it did. You needed an upgrade. You needed an upgrade at the tight end position, and this is a guy that's going to do exactly that for you. And I love this pick by the Steelers. And again, a need for the Steelers addressed early in the draft. Go figure. What a surprise. Love this selection, though. And so in the second round, 55th pick overall, the Pittsburgh Steelers tight end Pat Freiermuth for me is a 5. It's another outstanding pick by the Steelers. It's a position of need. It's great value at 55. I thought he would go a little bit sooner than that. And you're getting one of the better tight ends. I had him rated as my number 3 tight end. He was probably the second best tight end in this draft class. I might have been a little biased on my list. I will admit that because I put Notre Dame tight end Tommy Tremble just because of his versatility, and he's a little bit more athletically gifted than Pat Freiermuth. But Freiermuth, for all intents and purposes, is probably the second best tight end in this draft class. You get him at 55 in the second round, and it fits a need. And you didn't reach. You got great value here. I just love this pick for the Steelers. He's going to come in and give this offense a much-needed boost at the tight end position. We move on to the third round, 87th pick overall. Offensive lineman Kendrick Green out of Illinois is the pick. And if you haven't already done so, please subscribe to the Louie T Network, turn on your notification bell, and like this video. This is where I thought the Steelers started to try to reach for needs. And this is not uncommon for the Steelers. This is what they do. And I trust them. This is the difference between a team that reaches and doesn't have success and a team that reaches and they are able to produce with these players. The Steelers know what they're looking for. I might not always be able to see it, but they know what they're looking for, and they usually get a lot out of their draft picks. Not all the time, but especially on the offensive line, they've been able to milk a lot of these guys and get a lot out of them. And the good ones that they're supposed to, like David DeCastro and Pouncey, they live up to the hype They live up to being first-round picks. And then the guys that are these unknown soldiers like Alejandro Villanueva, they just come out of nowhere, and they are able to get the most out of these guys, or the Marcus Gilberts of the world. So I tend to side with the Steelers and give them the benefit of the doubt, but still, I thought this was a bit of a reach here in this third round with Kendrick Green. He should have been a day 3 pick no sooner than the 4th round, especially not the 3rd. I thought he would have probably been there in the 5th round, to be honest with you. He's so raw. However, he's a former high school defensive tackle that switched to the offensive line during his redshirt freshman season. So you can see a lot of that rawness because he hasn't played this position for a very long time. He's only played it for 3 years, essentially, after making the switch from the defensive side of the football. And you see a lot of that inconsistency in his game that he's still learning. And so he also put on 30 pounds to really help aid him in the process of making that switch from defensive tackle to offensive lineman. So he's still growing and learning his body. He's still adjusting to playing the offensive side of the football. And so you can see that. But, 33 consecutive starts at Illinois, 29 of them at the left guard position, 4 of them at the center position, which is ultimately what I think is going to be his home. You lose Pouncey. I think this is his replacement here. Even though he's more adept at playing guard at the collegiate level, he's going to play center at the NFL level more likely than not. That's what they drafted him for, and I think that's probably where he best fits, especially when you look at his size. He's only 6'2". He has shorter arms. He reeks of center. So I'm going to go ahead and project him as a center for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And here are the things that I feel like he does well, his strengths at this very moment. Elite quickness off the snap, and that's what you want out of your center. You want him to be able to snap the football and then get out of his stance and fire off the ball. And Kendrick Green is one of the better guys interior-wise doing that in this draft. Does a great job of working to the second level. Man, does he get to the second level quick. And that kind of is a byproduct of him getting off the snap quickly, helping on that double team, and then working his way to the second level. He does a really good job of sniffing out that linebacker or that safety or that second level defender to help pop a run for big yards. Anchors well, keeps the integrity of the pocket. He's a guy that once he gets his base set and is able to anchor down, you're not moving this guy. So again, that's another quality you want in your center, is to be able to anchor down, because there's nothing worse than interior pressure, especially right in the face of a quarterback. If that pocket's collapsing, you got issues. Now, Ben Roethlisberger, I don't know how much longer he's going to be around. This seems like his last go around. He's a big guy. He can see over the line. So if things start to break down, he can still, throw it over the line because he's a big guy. But, when you're protecting smaller quarterbacks, like a Drew Brees, for instance, it's important that the guard, center, guard combination are all stout, because the integrity of the pocket has to be kept. Kendrick Green is one of those types of guys. He looks for work. I love guys that look for work. You don't have anybody to block on that particular play. Don't just stand there with your hands out or your hands by your side and just looking around. Head on a swivel, look around, make sure there's not a late green dog or a late blitzer coming, and then go get you some. Go find somebody to wallop in melee, because what that does is it also puts that defensive lineman's head on a swivel, and now he's on notice, so he can't be as aggressive because he's worried about somebody coming and tearing up his ribs or depleting him as he's in contact with somebody else. So that's what you want. And I've seen this guy absolutely destroy defenders that are unsuspecting because he's got nobody to block, and he goes and he finds some work. Can get to reach block and wall off defenders. I talk about the quickness off the snap and the athleticism that he possesses. That allows him to get to some tough blocks, some tough ask of offensive linemen, those backside cutoffs, and some of those reach blocks when you're in zone and you're running outside zone, and you want to make sure that that defender doesn't get to that running back so he can cut it back. Kendrick Green is the guy for the job. He'll get to that reach block. He'll get to that cutoff on the backside of a play, allowing for that cutback by the running back. He's a guy that can wall off defenders. He's not a man mover by any stretch of the imagination, but he can wall off defenders and put his body in between himself and the ball carrier, or the defender and the ball carrier. So he does a really good job of walling off defenders. Offers positional flex, can play all three interior offensive line positions. Honestly speaking, that's nice to know, but I've already mentioned this already. He's a center. Don't see this guy playing much guard for you at the next level, but injuries can dictate, how you play around with your offensive line, and if things fluctuate in a pinch, Kendrick Green can give you snaps at either left or right guard. Negatives for Kendrick Green: looks more like a center and may be able to play guard. So a lot of people tried to frame this as, hey, you're getting a guard that could potentially kick inside the center. I think it's the opposite way around. You're getting a center that may be able, and I say may very loosely, may be able to play guard. So while I see that as a negative, the Steelers are like, well, we drafted him to be a center anyway, so it's not a problem for us. So just something worth mentioning. When you take a guy in the third round that's an interior offensive lineman, he better be able to play all three positions, which is part of the reason why I think this was a bit early for Kendrick Green. Inconsistent with moving feet to stay in front of target leads to overextending. So there are times where he doesn't get in great position and then he stops his feet. And instead of continuing to move his feet so that he can get into better position to block a guy, he just reaches and grabs and overextends. And that leads to trouble. It leads to flags. It leads to penetration. It leads to problems. And again, that's part of the inconsistency in his game right now, is that he's still raw. He still has a lot to learn. And again, I think the value of this pick will truly be hinged upon how well he's coached and how well he receives coaching and then takes that coaching to the field and is able to execute, because he's got a lot of learning to do, which is tough for me to stomach because he's a third-round pick. Yeah, every guy that comes in the league has some learning to do, and they've got a learning curve, but it shouldn't be as steep in the third round. But it is, I think, for Kendrick Green. But again, he'll be a center. There'll be a lot less asked of him. However, he still needs to improve upon some things, and moving his feet to stay in front of his target and not overextending is one of those things he needs to be better at. Can be disheveled by blitzes and who to pick up. This was something that was very alarming and disconcerting for me, is the fact that this is a guy that seems to struggle in blitz protection. Who do I pick up? Who do I take out of this play? Who is the MDM, most dangerous man? There are times where three guys run at him and he kind of is like a deer caught in headlights and he blocks nobody. Or he picks the wrong guy and then somebody's looking like, that was my guy, and now the whole blitz protection is all effed because he picked up the wrong guy. The running back's thinking, well, this is my guy. He doesn't adjust fast enough. Now the quarterback's getting gobbled up. These are types of mistakes you can't have. And again, his job will be a lot easier at center than it was at guard. And again, this is part of the maturation process for a guy that hasn't really played the offensive line before. So again, these are things he'll get better at with coaching and spending more time in the film room. But that's something that you saw quite a bit from him on film. Inconsistent passing off stunts, often missing looping defender. Again, similar to the blitz game, he's a guy that just didn't get it sometimes. You know, they'd send that stunting defender inside to occupy him, and then here comes the looping defender, and he's got to pass that guy off to the center and pick up this looping defender, and he just doesn't. He sticks with that stunting defender way too long. Here comes the twist coming around, and he's just not picking it up, and now the quarterback's either got to flush out of the pocket or he's getting swallowed up. And so that's something else he's got to get better at. And again, he'll have less on his plate as a center still. You know, that's something that he needs to be better at, needs to know. And really, I want him to know what the hell the guard has to do too. It makes your job easier when you know what everyone around you has to do. You know what they have to do, so it makes what you have to do easier to be able to comprehend. So he just needs to be a little bit more sharper in the mental aspect of the game as well. And that's to be expected for a guy that's only played the offensive line for 3 years. And then finally, he's on the ground way too often for me. I just can't stand offensive linemen that don't have a purpose for being on the ground. If you're cutting a guy, I get it. You're supposed to be on the ground. If you're pancaking a guy and you just get a hell of a block, okay, you just mollywop this guy and put him on his ass, you're on the ground. I get it. If it's short yardage situation, low man wins, you're on the ground. I get it. But if it's not one of those types of situations and you're just blocked, why are you on the ground? If somebody didn't come and fall on you or something like. You shouldn't be on the ground. He's on the ground way too often for me, and that's usually a sign of a guy that either doesn't have great balance, he has bad footwork, or he's just clumsy. And you get a little bit of all of that stuff at times from Kendrick Green. Again, all of these things are coachable offenses. He can get better at every single one of the things I just mentioned under the negatives category. But again, for a third round pick, these are things you get from a fifth round pick, not a third round pick, not a day 2 pick. Again, he's going to make the switch and transformation to center, so I think he's going to be okay. And if he's coached up correctly, he's got all the tools to be a really quality interior offensive lineman for you. But I don't love this pick by the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's too early for me. He's too raw. But again, this is the Steelers reaching for a need. This is what they do. This is what they've always done. And so in the third round, 87th pick overall, offensive lineman out of Illinois, Kendrick Green for me is a 2. I felt like I was being a little harsh with the 2. Could have easily been a 3 because I know he's going to make the switch to center, and I think he's going to be just fine inside at center. But I just thought this was poor value on the part of the Steelers. And I got to dock them for that. I can't let them slide knowing that there were better options available at the time of this pick. And they just decided that Kendrick Green was the man for the job. And they, instead of waiting, and he would have been around. But again, I always say get your guy when you feel the need to get your guy. They felt this was the time to pull the trigger on Kendrick Green. Maybe someone would have taken him 5 picks later. Who's to say? I just thought this was extremely early for Kendrick Green. As we move on to the 4th round now, day 3 of the draft, 128th overall selection, offensive lineman out of Texas A&M, Dan Moore Jr. is the pick, 6'5", 311-pound, 34.5-inch arm, senior offensive tackle for the Texas A&M football team. And what you see here is a guy that came to A&M as a guard. Okay, he was a high school guard, kicked outside to tackle, and made 37 consecutive starts. So another guy with some experience under his belt. And I love it because his experience came in the toughest conference in all of football. Now, I respect Big Ten tackles probably more than SEC tackles because I think you get better pass rushers out of the Big Ten. However, the SEC is the SEC. It's just tough every single week. Unlike the Big Ten, where they may have elite pass rushers. You may get an elite pass rusher from Iowa or Ohio State coming into the league, or Wisconsin. You don't see those guys every week. In the SEC, it's just big game after big game. It's Auburn one week. It's Alabama the next week. It's Florida the next week. It's Georgia. It just doesn't stop. They just keep coming week after week after week. So there's a level of respect that goes with playing in the SEC. And so, Dan Moore Jr. does get that from me. 36 starts at left tackle, 1 at right tackle. So he's got swing tackle ability if you need it. His strengths, long athletic frame with quality athleticism. And this guy that can move a bit. I like his movement skills. They're above functional. They're not just a guy that's out there, trying to hold his own. He's a guy that can move around. He can get out in front of screens, get to the second level. You can pull this guy. He can move. He's got some athletic qualities to him. But I just love his frame. There's a lot to work with here at 6'5", 310, and 34.5-inch arms. That screams the left tackle right there, those measurements. So there's something to work with here. But there are a lot of things that you're going to have to work on if you want this guy to end up being a starting caliber tackle for you. Let me just say this. I didn't think much of Alejandro Villanueva when he first started for the Steelers. And look what you got out of him. Marcus Gilbert, all these guys that you were able to really extract a ton of value out of. This is what the Steelers do. I don't love this pick again, like the last pick, but these are the types of guys that you're able to coach up and get the most out of. And if you can do that here, this will turn out to be a really solid pick for you. He's a 3-year starter in the SEC, as I already mentioned, so that's another strength. Good enough recovery to push defenders around the pocket, even when he's initially beat. Talked about the athleticism. Does a really good job of fighting like hell to push that guy up the field and not let him turn the corner. And so it keeps that integrity of the pocket that I talked about earlier with Kendrick Green and keeping the integrity of that pocket, that cup shape. They call it the cup. He does a great job of keeping that integrity by pushing that guy up the field and not allowing him to turn the corner and flatten the edge to the quarterback. Outstanding on wash down blocks with hard charging inside defenders. So when guys want to come and take a hard inside rush, he does a tremendous job of washing their ass clean inside. Just go ahead. They want to go that way, run them that way. Run them right across the face of the quarterback. Allow the quarterback to just simply either sidestep or side shuffle and reset his feet. Or if you wash him down clean enough, the quarterback doesn't even have to move. Either way, he does a really good job of washing those defenders that want to crash inside hard, washing them down clean, whether it's in the run game or in the pass game. When hands are early and placed well with a firm base, he doesn't move. You're not moving this guy. When he sets up shop and the feet are shoulder width apart, the base is set, his hands are in ready position, and he fires them, you're not moving this guy. He's going to jab you. He's going to keep you at bay. And then when you try to get into his chest, he's going to hold serve. He's going to hold his ground. Now, it's when he doesn't get off early, when he's not the aggressor, that's when we get into issues, and that's going to lead us right into his weaknesses. Inconsistent with his punch, hand placement, and controlling the rep. So as an offensive tackle, you want to control the rep. You want to control the action. You don't want to allow the defender to control the rep. You don't want him to be the aggressor. I talk about this every year. It never changes. This is my favorite analogy when it comes to tackles on the offensive side of the football. It's like a boxer with a great jab that has the reach advantage and wants to stay outside. You have to be aggressive and you have to be first. If you're the aggressive boxer with the long reach and the jab, you need to keep that guy at bay. You don't want him inside, because if he gets inside of you, he can do damage and it takes away your strength. As a tackle with 34.5-inch arms, your strength is your length. You don't want to let guys inside your body. You don't want to let guys inside your pads. You don't want to allow guys to drive you back. You're supposed to be the aggressor. Use that punch to keep a guy off balance and keep him disoriented, and keep that distance you need to be able to win and control the rep. You don't always get that from Dan Moore. He's not always aggressive. Too many times his 34-inch arms don't get recoiled. Okay, they're inside tight, and he's fighting this for his life to not get bull rushed, and he's fighting a guy who's inside his chest, and his hands are by his side because he never got to extend them because he wasn't aggressive enough. He's got to control the rep more often. He's got to be more aggressive. He's too passive. Speaking of which, he lacks KI. What is KI? Killer instinct. I told you it's not a prerequisite to be a great offensive lineman, but damn if it doesn't help to have KI. I want guys with a nasty streak, and just a little nasty. You don't have to be a nasty son of a bitch. You don't have to be an SOB, okay? That's always welcomed, but you don't have to be that. But there does need to be some semblance of a nasty streak, willing to put a guy's dick in the dirt at moment's notice. I don't see that with Dan Moore Jr. at all. I don't see a guy that's looking to take a guy and dump him on his skull just for the sake of saying, I'm tougher than you. He's a guy that just wants to do his job and go home. And that's okay, but sometimes you can see that lack of aggressiveness, assertiveness coming out. And that doesn't bode well in the trenches where nice guys generally finish last. Okay, so I need him to be more aggressive, and it doesn't even have to be in the run game. Simply as him shooting his hands in the pass game as a protector, just being more aggressive there. I just need him to have a little bit more edge to him, and I just don't see that. When he opens the door, man, does he struggle to close it. So what do I mean by that? When he opens up his hips out of his pass set, okay, when he thinks speed is coming, and so he opens up his hips, now his feet are parallel to the line of scrimmage. Now that his feet are parallel to the line of scrimmage, he's in trouble. He's opened up his hips. Now the most direct path to the quarterback has been engaged, essentially. All right. Now a guy can take a direct straight line path to the quarterback inside. He doesn't have the recovery necessary, the quickness of redirecting, if you will, to stop a guy once he opens his hips and then that guy has fooled him. Whether it's a crossover, so guy goes hard outside, back inside with a 1-2 step, or a guy just says, hey, I'm going inside, and he's expecting them to go outside. Hasn't shown them an inside rush the entire game, and we might be halfway through the second quarter, or we may be into the third quarter, and he hasn't seen an inside rush that entire game. He's a guy that struggles to then close that door. It's open now. He struggles to close it. So that's something else that I saw from him. He needs to be a little bit better in that regard. Takes poor second level angles and inconsistent body control to stay in front of defenders. So when he gets to the second level, and he's got enough athleticism to get out to the second level, and I've talked about that already, his problem is he doesn't do a great job of centering up that defender and getting hands on that guy. He's an easy target to evade out in space. He doesn't put himself in great position to block that guy. He does a lot of reaching. He does a lot of whiffing. And so he doesn't do a great job at the second level. He's not a great second level blocker. He doesn't do a great job of getting to the second level and getting his body on a body at the second level of the defense. Can be indecisive on who to take during blitz pickup. This is the second guy in a row that we're having a discussion about knowing who to pick up in blitz situations. It's a lot less of a problem at tackle than it is guard, because a lot of times with tackles on the edge, it's not really hard. So I think it's just a matter of him just identifying. And a lot of times there were overloads too, and those can get kind of complicated sometimes. You want the MDM, and a lot of those times he would take the MDM. But if you know you've got help inside, then you need to just push that guy off and then get a piece of the next guy. Like, you got to use your brain sometimes as an offensive tackle. Yeah, I know I'm supposed to be blocking this guy, but the guard inside of me isn't blocking anybody, and he's got help. I've got help to my inside. So I'm just going to give him a little one-arm chuck to make sure that he gets to the guard. But then I'm going to get out here and fan out to this safety that's coming off the edge. I'm not just going to allow him to run free. Even if it's a push here and a slight tug, that guy is 197 pounds, or that guy's 205. Just a slight push from me would do wonders instead of just letting him run unabated to the quarterback. So, he can be indecisive sometimes on what to do in blitz pickup situations. And again, that will be something that subsides with more film study, more work. And again, this is a guy that played guard at high school and then played tackle at Texas A&M. So still developing, but there's enough experience here that you would not like to see some of those things on film. At the end of the day, this is a solid pickup, is Dan Moore, but he lacks the aggression that I'm looking for. He's a guy that, to me, struggles to control reps enough for my liking. There are too many times where I see him giving up ground to a bull rush. There are too many instances where a guy with a crossover gets him and is able to get a rush. I think there are going to be some holding penalties if he's not better with his body control in terms of staying in front of guys. There could be some issues here with Dan Moore Jr., and I just didn't love the value here in the fourth round. Again, I just felt like this was a reach. You lose Alejandro Villanueva, and here you are reaching again for a guy. And look, this, as you start to get deeper into the draft, I would have much rather you taken a tackle where you took Kendrick Green and then doubled back and got the center. You could have still found Kendrick Green in the fourth round. If this were Kendrick Green, I would have been a lot more receptive to the pick, and you would have gotten a better quality tackle in the third round than what you got here in the fourth round. I mean, I thought your priorities were a little bit out of whack here if you're the Steelers. And again, you may be looking at this guy as strictly depth and a swing tackle, and you already got a replacement for Alejandro Villanueva on the roster. That could be the case as well. If you're looking for Dan Moore Jr. to step in and start day one, I think you're making a mistake. But in any event, in the fourth round, 128th pick overall, Dan Moore Jr. for me is a 2. Again, I don't love the value here. The player is okay at best for me, and you may ultimately get the most out of this guy, and you've done that in the past. I just don't love the value at this pick. I just don't. I thought that this was a little early for him, just like I thought it was early for Kendrick Green. And I think you're getting an average player at best. Now, again, coaching could turn this guy into because he's got the tools. He's got the size. He's got the length. He's got the athleticism. He's got everything you're looking for. But he doesn't have the aggressiveness. And I don't know if you can coach that or not. I don't think that's something you can coach. As we move on to the next selection in this draft, fourth round, 140th pick, so second fourth rounder for the Pittsburgh Steelers here. They go linebacker Buddy Johnson out of Texas A&M. So for the second consecutive pick, we are at College Station snatching up a former Aggie, this time on the defensive side of the football, in Buddy Johnson. And I really do like this pick here, however. 6 feet, 229, senior linebacker that kind of does a little bit of everything. The knock on him was that he wasn't athletic enough to be on the field all 3 downs. I think his pro day might have said something different, however, as he was clocked at 4.5 flat by A&M. I think that's a little bit of an exaggeration there. Jim Nagy, who is the senior director of the Senior Bowl, clocked him at a 4.59. I think that's a little extreme too. I'd more so side with Jim Nagy than I would A&M, but I think he's somewhere in between. You're literally talking about a tenth of a second of difference there between the two times. I think that's a little bit extreme. I think he's somewhere in the middle. I put him at 4.54, 4.55, 4.54, somewhere in there. And that's plenty of speed at the linebacker position if you're Buddy Johnson. So I think he showed well. And the reason I think he's faster than a 4.6, which is what he was clocked at by Jim Nagy essentially, is he had a 10.8 broad and a 38-inch vert. And that speaks of explosion. So I think that he's more of a 4.54 guy. And I think he ran better than people expected him to. And I actually saw times on tape where he actually moved well. His short area quickness does leave a little to be desired, and I think that's part of the reason why people don't think he can be on the field and on third downs. But this is a guy that I think fits into the mold of Pittsburgh Steelers linebacker. I think he's going to fit in very well with the Steelers and come in and give them some more depth at the linebacker position and eventually start for them. So his strengths, leadership qualities. He's an alpha male in terms of his mentality. He's just a guy on the field that knows the position, knows where everybody's supposed to line up, and knows that he's capable of getting the job done. And he carries himself in that manner, and I think that's something that they valued when they made this selection of Buddy Johnson. So you're bringing a guy in here with high football IQ and some leadership qualities into a locker room that I think demands that. So that's one of his strengths. Plays with physicality, grit, and toughness. And those are all things that, to me, embody a Pittsburgh Steelers defender. Physicality, grit, and toughness. He has all of those things in spades. So that's another thing that you're getting here with Buddy Johnson. He's not afraid to put a hat on a hat at all. Plays under control with very functional GPS. So one of the things I admired about Buddy Johnson is that he doesn't make too many mistakes in gap control. He gets into the proper fit 9 times out of 10. Now, sometimes he's a little too deliberate in making that determination. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but he plays the game at his pace. You're not going to speed this guy up. You're not going to change the way he defends. He's got a method to his madness, and it works for him, and it's fun to watch. When it works, it's fun to watch when he executes it to perfection. And his GPS, it works. And that's why I said he doesn't make too many mistakes in terms of picking the hole that the running back's going to pursue or fitting into the proper gap. There aren't many times you're going to see this guy overrun a play. It happens from time to time, but it's not often. It's not frequent. And generally, he goes to where the ball carrier ultimately is going to be. So he's got a very functional GPS. Phenomenal at disengaging from blockers to get in on a tackle. I love this part of his game. This may be my favorite part of what Buddy Johnson brings to the table, is that he doesn't stay blocked. So many times with linebackers, they engage an offensive lineman and they felt like they've done their job. Hey, I filled my gap. Somebody else clean it up. You can actually engage an offensive lineman and then disengage and make the tackle. You are allowed to do that. You don't have to stay blocked because you've done your job and you filled the B gap. Now, I filled the B gap, so somebody else make the tackle. No, you can still make the tackle. You're allowed to do that. And he does a phenomenal job. One of the best I've seen in this draft of engaging offensive linemen, then shedding offensive linemen, getting to the ball carrier. Does it time and time again. Love watching him do that. Does a good job with pursuit angles. Kind of talked about that already, but he takes clean angles to the ball. Now, I can tell you this. Sometimes you see the lack of top-end speed at times rear its ugly head when he gets out to the edge. He takes a great angle, but the guy outruns his angle, and now Buddy Johnson is trying to make a tackle from behind instead of being able to meet that guy at the apex or get in front of him and push him out of bounds or make him have to cut back. But there are a lot of times where guys are able to outrun his angle, turn the corner on him, and he misses the tackle. You see that from time to time, especially out in space on dump-offs, on swing routes, things of that nature. Flares out of the backfield where, all right, Buddy's got to meet him. Buddy's got the angle, and Buddy gets outran. You see that from time to time. But he does take really good pursuit angles. Seems to always be around the action. And I just love defenders that I can say that about. Just always seems to be around the football. Because good things happen when you're around the ball. I can't stress that enough. And Buddy Johnson is one of those guys that seems to always be around the action. Like against Florida late in that ball game, they needed a stop. He makes a tackle, forces a fumble. They ultimately win the football game by a field goal because of that turnover he forced. So he just always seems to be around the action. Had a pick 6 against LSU this past year. He just always seems to be around the action. So that's something I love. And he's experienced at both the inside and outside linebacker position. So, you can decide where you want to line this guy up. To me, he's an inside backer. But you can decide where you want to line this guy up. But more likely than not, the Steelers are going to put him in inside backer and turn this guy loose. And I think he's going to do some good things for you. So weaknesses. Can be too methodical at times, allowing linemen to climb to the second level. Talked about that already. That sometimes he's too patient, trying to decide where to go. He's too patient deciphering what gap that this running back is going to attack. And so in waiting so long, you allow that guard or that center to come off the double team and get to you at the second level. And now all of a sudden, instead of you meeting this guy in the hole and clogging it up and making him have to go somewhere else, he's got free access to the second level. And now what should have been a 4-yard gain or a 2-yard gain is now an 8 or a 12-yard gain. So sometimes he needs to be a little bit more aggressive in forcing the action. And there's a time and a place for all of that. There's a time to be patient. There's a time to be aggressive. There's a fine line and a balance there. Sometimes that balance can be a little bit skewed with Buddy Johnson. Not the most dynamic athlete. Talked about that already. No, he's not a blazer. And in a draft where it seemed like everybody was running sub 4.5, somebody had him clocked at damn near a 4.6. It's not what you're looking for at the linebacker position, but I think at the end of the day, I think he's a good enough athlete. I think he's quality in that department. But no, he's not a dynamic athlete. I have seen guys turn the corner on him. He can be a liability in the pass game at times. He's been put in some tough spots. He shouldn't be covering Kadarius Toney in the slot by himself. That's a tough ask of any linebacker. Give him shit how fast you are. So, there are times where he can be a liability, but he's not the most dynamic athlete, but he can make up for that in other ways. And then my last thing is he runs the contact. Now you're thinking, well, that's what you want your linebacker to do. Yeah, that's cool, but sometimes you don't have to run the contact, meaning I don't want you going and engaging the guard just because he's there. If you can run around him and make the tackle, if you can beat him to the punch and make the tackle, do that. Like, you don't have to meet this guy and say, hey, guard's coming to meet me, so I'm going to meet him first, and I'm going to meet him with bad intentions and take on the block. Don't seek out the block of an offensive lineman. Go make the tackle if you can. Now, I'm not saying run around blocks and create openings, which is not what Buddy Johnson does. But what I'm also saying is if that guy isn't within striking distance and you can get to the running back first, don't go seek out contact from the guard and then try and make the tackle. You're just giving up another yard or two doing that. Just go get the running back. Go make the tackle. So he runs the contact. He's a guy that wants to take on the offensive guard or the center and then make the tackle. That's not necessary all the time. You don't have to show that you're a tough guy. Go make the play. So my comp for him is Blake Martinez, formerly of the Green Bay Packers, out of Stanford, now with the New York Giants. Just a really solid linebacker that does a little bit of everything. Martinez wasn't viewed as a guy that was going to be tremendous in the pass game necessarily because of his lack of speed coming out of Stanford. And yet he's been a really solid 3-down linebacker that does a little bit of everything. I see a lot of that in Buddy Johnson. And so in the 4th round, 140th pick overall, linebacker out of Texas A&M, Deverick Buddy Johnson for me is a 3. Really like this pick. Think he's going to fit in perfectly with this Steelers defense. As we move on to the next pick in the draft for the Steelers, 5th round, 156th overall, defensive lineman out of Wisconsin, Isaiah Loudermilk is the pick. More like quiet milk, if you ask me. If you're out there, you like this video, hit the like button. Show some love. Subscribe to the Louie T Network if you haven't already done so. Also, hit that notification bell so you don't miss any Pittsburgh Steelers content coming out of this channel. 6'6", 274 stands Isaiah Loudermilk. Not my favorite player in this draft. As a matter of fact, I wouldn't have been shocked if this guy had gone undrafted. I don't see a lot here. So I'm telling you what I'm leaning towards already before I give you my analysis of him. He played 8-man high school football in Kansas, and it looks like it. He dominated it, but this isn't 8-man football here, buddy. This is 11 on 11, guy. And to me, he's just an average Joe. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But in any event, strengths. And just to give you a little quick synopsis, played in 40 games, 11.5 tackles for loss, 7.5 sacks in his career, 9 pass breakups, 2 forced fumbles, and 1 blocked kick for Isaiah Loudermilk. So his strengths, well-configured frame. He's got some height on him, and it looks like he could put on some more weight, got some more room for mass. So I wouldn't be shocked to see Isaiah Loudermilk in 2 years at 290, playing 5-tech for the Pittsburgh Steelers. That wouldn't shock me at all. Solid at the point of attack. For a guy his size, and that's my next strength, so I'll just lump them together. The reason he plays with or is so solid at the point of attack is because he plays with good leverage, and that's pretty surprising for a big man. When you see guys that are 6'6", 6'7", as Isaiah Loudermilk is, a lot of times they tend to stand straight up. They're upright, and they don't bend at the knees. And so what that does is it causes a problem with leverage. You're allowing guys to get under your pads, and they win the leverage battle. He does a really good job of bending his knees and having a little bit of that leverage that you look for on the defensive line to hold your ground at the point of attack against a lineman or a double team. So he does play with solid leverage for a guy his size at 6'6". Can bull rush and collapse the pocket with E-Honda hands. So what you'll get is at time you'll get the sumo wrestler hands where they're boop, 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 boop. You can't really see my hands, but it's one hand after the other with this upward strike like a sumo wrestler, like E-Honda from Street Fighter. And when he gets that going, he's hard to stop. And at that point, now the guard or the center, they're in essentially salvage mode at that point. Like, how can I salvage this rep? How can I find a way to anchor down and stop this guy from, potentially collapsing the pocket completely and getting to the quarterback? And when he is able to do that, he's at his best. There aren't many moves in the move Rolodex, so the bull rush is one of the best things he's got going. And when he does the sumo hands E-Honda thing, that's where he's probably at his best. When he takes one hand, replaces it with the other, it continues to drive. That's essentially Isaiah Loudermilk at his loudest. Aware enough to get hands in the passing lane. This is my favorite thing he brings to the table, is that he's a big, tall guy. He realizes that. He's not a great pass rusher. He realizes that. I'm not getting to the quarterback. He realizes that. So what do? I get my hands up. 9 pass breakups over his career is tremendous, okay? In 2019, he had 5 of them. So this is a guy that sees what's happening in front of him, gets his hands up. I love it. A deflection is just as good as a pass deflection from a defensive back. It's just as good as a hit on a quarterback that's trying to get rid of the football. It's just as good as a throwaway. It's an incomplete pass, and you don't know what's behind that knockaway, that bat down, that pass breakup by a defensive lineman. There could have been a wide open receiver behind that guy for all we know. So I love that about Isaiah Loudermilk. Now let's talk about when he goes to Isaiah Quiet Milk. And that's no foot speed or twitchiness to win one-on-one finesse battles. So he'll mix it up in the physicality department. But when we start talking about finesse, got you tripping in finesse. When we start talking about finesse, his game don't make no sense. All right, he's not a guy that's going to beat a guard or a tackle with quickness. You're not getting a Cam Hayward here. There are no moves in the move Rolodex. There are no wins here. He won't get lucky and have 9.5 sacks at any point in his career. He's not doing that. So don't look for it because he doesn't have enough foot quickness to do that. He might fall into a sack. He may be relentless and there may be good coverage down the field. He'll fall into one or two of those because the motor continues to run. But he's not winning any one-on-one battles with finesse. It ain't happening. Lacks any consistent moves in the tool belt. He's just got a bull rush and a weak-ass spin. He could keep that spin move because it's trash. But the bull rush, the E Honda hands, that's essentially it. That's all he's got. He didn't have much else. There's no crossover. There's no quickness. There's no quick spin or swim. There's no rip. None of that. He's got nothing. He's got nothing for you. Lacks run play awareness. He can't find the ball. Man, it was hard and painful to watch this guy track the football in the run game. They run read option, and this guy is running with the running back. Meanwhile, the quarterback still got the ball, and he's running 15 yards down the field, and he's still chasing running back. I'm like, dude, where the hell are you going? Simple outside zone, and quarterback's carrying out his fake. He's chasing quarterback, and the running back's taking off outside zone, and he's up the field 8 yards, and he's still chasing quarterback on carrying out his fake. Like, seriously, dude? What are we doing right now? I mean, this guy is clueless at times as to where the football is in the run game. Simply no awareness there. He's a worker bee, man. Simply put, he's a jag. Just a guy. He is just a guy. Like, he comes a dime a dozen. You can find these guys anywhere. You didn't have to draft Isaiah Loudermilk in the 5th round. That's personally how I feel. He'd have been around in the 7th round. That's how I feel. I could be wrong again. I don't know how other people view Isaiah Loudermilk. He might have been a hot commodity late in the draft. That, again, could have been gone 5 picks after the Steelers made this decision. It's hard for me to stomach that. It's hard for me to buy that he wouldn't have been around in the 6th round or even the 7th round, honestly speaking. Hard for me to believe that there weren't better options for a 5 technique that the Steelers were potentially looking for. The Steelers, but this is the thing I always say, they identify good talent on the defensive line, guys that fit their scheme. And I don't doubt that for Isaiah Loudermilk. I think he's going to come in and he's going to fit what they're looking for, and he's going to give them something potentially. But I don't see it. I don't love it. And my comp for him is R.J. McIntosh, former Miami Hurricanes defensive lineman, drafted by the Giants. To me, just a guy. And I see a lot of the same qualities here in Isaiah Loudermilk. 5th round, 156 pick overall. A defensive lineman out of Wisconsin. Isaiah Loudermilk for me is a 2. Just feels like a reach. And I don't know if this is necessarily a position of need for the Steelers or not. But it feels like a reach. Feels like the Steelers said, hey, we need some more depth on the defensive line. Let's take a guy right now. Felt like they could have done some different things here and maybe maximize this pick a bit more than they did. And so I don't love this selection at all. As we move on to the next pick in the draft, this is a pick that I absolutely love it from the Steelers. 6th round, 216th pick overall. Edge rusher out of the U. Quincy Roche is the pick. This is the guy that I've already broken down previously in my draft wrap-up draft prospects series. So I'm not going to do that here, but At 6'3", 243, you're getting a quality size edge rusher to replace Bud Dupree. And I honestly think he's going to step in and give you quality snaps right away. I've already broken him down, so I'm not going to do that here. I will read my analysis of him, however, because I haven't done that yet. And what I will tell you is that he isn't great at any one thing, but man, is he good at everything. And you're getting a really polished, one of the better, more polished pass rushers in a draft class that featured a lot of raw guys that you had to draft based on upside. You're not drafting Quincy Roche based off of upside. You're drafting him because he's a known commodity. This is why he fell. He's not dynamic as an athlete in any stretch of the imagination, but what he is a really good football player that I think is going to fit in perfectly with the Pittsburgh Steelers. One of the most polished pass rushers in the 2021 NFL Draft, Quincy Roche finds ways to impact the game, whether in the ACC with the Miami Hurricanes or the previous 3 years with the Temple Owls of the AAC. Roche lacks the ideal size and length teams covet, but coming off the edge as a rusher from a two-point stance or knifing into the backfield to disrupt a run play seems to be where he excels and has all the savvy, athleticism, and know-how to do it. Craftiness with his hands, quickness, and pass rush polish and awareness allow Roche to make his presence felt most contests, and it's those qualities and his production throughout his collegiate career that allows him to be viewed as one of the better 3-4 outside linebacking edge options in the 2021 NFL Draft. I had a day 2 grade on this guy. I thought he was going to go in the second or third round. I had a second round grade on him. I said in my breakdown that I like him better than most. I knew he wasn't going to go where I had him projected to go because I liked him more than other people did. And that's okay because I know what I'm looking for, and other people are looking for athleticism and flash and splash plays. And you're not getting that out of Quincy Roche. So he was going to be overlooked. He's not the biggest guy. He's not 6'5". He doesn't have vines for arms. All of the things that people want to draft early, he doesn't have. So he wasn't going to go early. But I wouldn't be shocked if we look back at this draft and in 5 years, Roche is one of the better, more consistent pass rushers out of this draft class. It wouldn't shock me. Now, it also wouldn't shock me if he's just a guy, but I think he landed in the perfect spot because there's no attention being paid to him. TJ Watt is the man in Pittsburgh, and Cam Hayward is a guy you got to pay attention to, and Stephon Tuitt is a guy you got to pay attention to. Nobody's going to be paying attention to Quincy Roche. He's going to have a chance to eat, and I think he will do exactly that. I love his game. My comp for him is D Ford. Again, if you want the video breakdown of Quincy Roche, I will pin that in the comment along with the breakdown of Pat Freiermuth down below in the video. So I love this pick. I think you got away with theft here in the 6th round. He had no business being here, to be honest with you. And everybody else's loss is your gain. 6th round, 216th pick overall. Edge rusher out of Miami, Quincy Roche for me is a 4. I just think this is a phenomenal pickup by the Steelers and a guy that's going to be able to come in right away. Not only is he going to make your football team as a 6th round pick, he's going to come in and be impactful year 1. Mark my words. I think you're going to get at least 4 sacks from this kid in his rookie season because he is a quality football player. We go to the 7th round, 245th pick overall. Defensive back out of Oklahoma, Trey Norwood is the selection. This is a guy that Mike Tomlin announced the pick and described as a Swiss Army knife, a do-it-all type of defender. And I think they have visions of him being a Mike Hilton in this defense, a guy that can blitz, play a little bit of the nickel, play some safety. I don't think he's Mike Hilton. Let's just go ahead and say that. If this is supposed to be your Mike Hilton replacement, he's not Mike Hilton. I'll tell you who I think he could be in this league, however, who he really projects and comps to. Trey Norwood is a guy that could be the guy that I comp him to and be one of those types of players that's going to be around for a while, or he could be out of the league in 3 years. It's his choice. He's got to make a decision, a conscious decision. 1, he's got to stay healthy. 2, he's got to make a conscious decision to become that kind of defender. In any event, 38 games in his career, 111 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 1 sack, 15 pass breakups, and 6 INTs, 5 of which came in 2020. 1 touchdown in those 5 interceptions, picking off Florida quarterback Kyle Trask in his final collegiate game of his career in the bowl game for a touchdown. So 4.58 40 guy is Trey Norwood, 33.5-inch vert, 10.3 broad. So solid numbers, not earth-shattering. They don't jump out at you. The 4.58 isn't a tremendous number, but it's an okay number. It's not a terrible number. His strengths: offers versatility at cornerback and safety. This is a guy that came to Oklahoma as a wide receiver, then switched to corner, then was transitioned to safety. So he's got ball skills, which you can see with the 5 interceptions. Speaking of which, often finds himself around the ball with outstanding ball skills. And I talked about that with Buddy Johnson. I just like guys that are around the football. You know, you see him in the Texas Tech game, and he gets 2 picks in that game, and they're both tip picks. You know, he didn't do anything special. He just right time, right place, Johnny on the spot. But that's what you want. You want a guy that's around the action, because when you put yourself in position to make plays, good things happen. So he's got tremendous ball skills, and you see that in plays like the pick 6 against Florida and Kyle Trask, or the interception against Brock Purdy and Iowa State in the Big 12 championship game. Like, you see those things, see the ball skills in those situations. So this is a guy with some ball skills, and you can see the ex-wide receiver background when he goes up and goes and competes for the football. Room for growth as a safety. So this was really his first year playing safety. Tore his ACL in 2019. We'll talk about that in a second. And so in 17 and 18, he played the cornerback position. So for all intents and purposes, this was his first year at safety, and they didn't ask him to do much. They didn't give him a ton of responsibilities. He essentially was a 2-high safety. So he just played a half of the field. They just said, hey, you stay deeper than the deepest. Don't let anybody behind you. They didn't give him a lot on his plate at the safety position. So he can grow more at the safety. He can be asked to do more things, and I think the Steelers are going to do exactly that, ask him to do a little bit more at the safety position. So there is room for growth as a safety if they so choose to play him at that position. Willing to come down aggressively in the run game. He's not afraid. I didn't say he was adept at it. I just said he's not afraid. And that's half the battle, is wanting a guy to get in there and throw his hat in the mix. You get a lot of guys that just don't want the smoke, especially that were ex-offensive players or ex-corners. They really don't want the smoke. He's willing to come down now. Again, what is he going to do when he comes down? That's a totally different story, but he's willing to come down. That's half the battle. Can be a nuisance around the line of scrimmage. This is a guy that can blitz. He can play underneath zone coverage. He can be a robber, kind of keying the quarterback's eyes and seeing if it takes him to the football. He can do a number of things as a guy down around the line of scrimmage, and I think that's something that the Steelers really saw and valued when making this selection. His weaknesses: had a torn ACL in 2019. Let's just start with the biggest one and the elephant in the room. He had a preseason torn ACL, missed the entire 19 season. You need him to stay healthy first and foremost. He did bounce back in 2020 and have a strong campaign, so that's good to know, but that is on the Carfax. Not twitchy, nor does he possess difference-making quicks or speed. So where he struggles in man-to-man coverage is staying in phase, because he isn't twitchy, because he struggles with transitions, and he doesn't have that click and close ability to drive on the football. And then when he has to open up his hips and run, he doesn't have makeup speed. There isn't that next gear he can tap into. So when he gets beat, he usually stays beat. If that ball's thrown on the money, he's not going to recover and get back into the play. Spotty tackler, tons of barking, but minimal biting. So he'll come down and be aggressive, and that's what all the barking is about. He'll bark. He'll do a ton of barking. He'll come down. He looks like he's about to wallop somebody, and then all of a sudden, he's grabbing, he's biting at the ankles. He's trying to shoestring tackle somebody. He's got a piece of cloth, but he doesn't wrap. It's a lot of barking, man. There ain't a lot of biting going on with Trey Norwood. I don't love him as a tackling defender. That's something he's going to have to get better at for sure. Struggles in man-to-man situations, staying in phase. I kind of mentioned that already, but I just reiterate it once more. At the Senior Bowl, he was torched continuously. And you see it on film, too, where guys are able to kind of, set him up, stem him, and get on top of him. I'm watching him against Florida, and their backup tight end Gamble just gives him a stick nod at the stem of the route and then gets vertical, and he leaves Trey Norwood. I mean, just absolutely leaves him. Ball severely underthrown, which is what allows Norwood to get back into the play. They tangle feet. If that ball's thrown out in front of him, he's smoked on the play. And that's what you see from him on tape. There's the giveth and the taketh away. So he'll give up plays, but he can also take things away, like that pick six. It was a badly thrown football, but it was a good recovery by Norwood after being duped to the outside. That receiver was open. Bad ball. He wins to the inside, picks it off, takes it the other way. So he struggles in man-to-man situations. We'll see if he gets better at that at the next level. But my player comp is one, I think it's my favorite comp of this entire draft class for the Steelers. I think it's the most spot on. He's Jalen Mills, 7th round pick by the Philadelphia Eagles out of LSU. Not a ton of speed. People weren't sold on his ability to make that transition in the NFL to potentially a safety after being a cornerback at the collegiate level, but lacking that top-end speed. Mills came into the league, initially was tried at corner, quickly realized this guy's a safety, moved him to safety, played some really good ball for the Eagles, showed the physicality necessary to be a safety that'll come down and hit you, but also can make plays on the ball as a former corner. And now the Patriots have signed him to be their new do-it-all Patrick Chung type of safety in their defense. That's what Trey Norwood has to be. That's who he has to develop into, is Jalen Mills. If he can't become that kind of football player that you have confidence in one-on-one situations to cover tight ends or to tackle guys out in space, if he can't become that guy, then I don't think he's going to last in this league very long. So love that comp. And I think this is a quality pick. I got more confidence in him than others do. I actually like this pick in the 3rd round. Trey Norwood for me in the 7th round is a 3. And so we wrap up this Steelers draft in the 7th round, 254th pick overall. Punter out of Georgia Tech, Presley Harvin III is the pick. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe to the Louie T Network for more great content. Turn on that notification bell so you don't miss any Pittsburgh Steelers content or any content on this channel for that matter. Cover all 32 teams and like this video if you appreciate the content. So not much to say here. Not going to spend a lot of time on this guy. He's a punter. They didn't break any rules. My rule of thumb with any specialist, punter, long snapper, place kicker, 5th round or later, I don't have any problems with it. They got their guy in the 7th round here. First of all, let me just say this. I'm not going to say much. I've never seen a punter bigger than this guy. He's the equivalent of the hefty lefty that was in the Giants. Jarrett Lorenzen, who came from Kentucky, that was with the Giants. Massive left-handed quarterback. He reminds me of him. I've never seen a punter this big. Maybe Sebastian Janikowski in his former years, or latter years, I should say, towards the end of his career, got a little big there. He didn't, meet a meal he didn't like. But, man, is this kid big. That said, big leg, one of the best punters in college football, won the Ray Guy Award for the best punter in the nation. Inconsistent hang time. He's got the quickest release from catch to kick I've ever seen. However, because of that, his kicks get returned at a much higher clip. Not necessarily for touchdowns or anything of the sort, but they get returned because he's not allowing coverage to get down there because he's getting it out so fast. So I think he's going to have to slow down his catch to kick ratio. You don't want to slow it down too much. You don't want guys having a chance to block it, but you also want to allow the kick coverage time to get down there and force a fair catch. That said, it's a punter. You drafted him in the 7th round. He's a big kid. We'll see what it does for you. But again, it's a punter in the 7th round. What are you going to do? He's a 2 for me to wrap up this Steelers draft. And so let's get to the final score for the Steelers and their draft in 2021. So running back Najee Harris in the 1st round is a 5. Tight end Pat Freiermuth in the 2nd round is a 5. Back-to-back offensive lineman picks. Kendrick Green out of Illinois is a 2. Dan Moore Jr. out of Texas A&M, also a 2. Linebacker Buddy Johnson as your 5th pick in the 4th round. A 3. Your 6th pick in this draft, defensive lineman Isaiah Loudermilk is a 2. 7th pick in this draft, edge rusher Quincy Roche is a 4. Love that pick in the 6th round. 8th pick is defensive back Trey Norwood out of Oklahoma. He's a 3. And your final pick of this draft, your 9th and final pick, punter Presley Harvin III is a 2 out of Georgia Tech. You total all of that up, you get 28. You divide by the 9 selections, and it's a 3.11 for the Pittsburgh Steelers in the 2021 NFL Draft Wrap-Up Series to kick off this series. Not a bad score, but it could have been better. That said, that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, and the Steelers Draft Wrap-Up Series this year. Look forward to watching the Steelers team, seeing what they evolve into in Roethlisberger's last year, potentially. Solid draft, but not my favorite Steelers draft. That said, I think they got some good football players. Harris and Freiermuth are going to come in and immediately impact the offense. I think Roche and Norwood have a chance to be guys that come in and impact the defense early on. And we'll see what happens with some of the guys you took in the middle of the draft and on the offensive line, and Moore and Green. And I think Buddy Johnson is going to come in and help defensively as well. So I think this is a solid draft all the way around for the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's going to do it for me, your man Louie T. Remember, if it's not your man T, it's not the best NFL coverage at Good P. And remember, get off the bench, get in the game. I'm your man Louie T. Until next time, take care. Have a good one.
LouieTeeNetwork.